Hello, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Today, we are gathered here to share with you a comprehensive and insightful short webinar on the critically important subject matter of teacher resilience and overall well-being. We attended a training in Dublin in July precisely on this topic. So myself, Professor Patricia, and Professor Sonia Cruz. It's up to me to deliver this short webinar, which will last no more than half an hour, but will essentially give you a glimpse of how can we as teachers act after all the exhaustion that this profession brings us. We need to guide our minds, our mental attitude, what is often called mindset these days, towards our own well-being, for the well-being of our students. But for our students to be well, we need to be well ourselves first. I'll start here with this slide where I present an image that shows us there is a reference to the school and to the smiles of students and teachers. So it is with great pleasure that I am going to share with you some of the knowledge, although I am not a specialist, I should mention that, but some of the knowledge we learned in Dublin with Professor or Trainer Patrick. Okay, so let's strengthen emotional skills, cultivate that mental attitude, the very resilient mindset in the educational context, given all the challenges we face daily. Let's cultivate a deep-seated mindset of resilience and a spirit of continuous adaptation to the world around us. We simply will not break. That is our core intention, because the very concept of resilience is fundamentally oriented toward this powerful idea of remaining steadfast and not breaking under pressure. So, our journey together today is one of profound reflection, dedicated learning, and actively promoting our collective well-being and inner strength. We have a set of tools, strategies, breathing techniques to strengthen our resilience, to help us not break in our daily lives. So it's important for us to understand this resilience. What exactly is it? What does it mean to be resilient? Then we identify our personal strengths. We start recognizing our internal journeys, our stability, our attitudes in the classroom context and in the teacher's lounge context, which is also very important. We will explore some more technical and practical mindfulness strategies. Therefore, this mindfulness technique is a kind of strategy to deal with stress. This strategy also involves, in a way, if you'll allow me to say so, the power of the mind. And we are going to take care of ourselves to cultivate self-care. It's important for a teacher to take care of themselves. How can we take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves? So this assumption is fundamental for our journey. Therefore, being resilient is not about breaking, it's about caring. Being resilient is a starting point for us to improve our well-being in daily life. So resilience is not about enduring everything. Resilience is not simply about enduring. Look at the first paragraph, or passively resisting difficulties. It is the dynamic ability to recover in the face of the various adversities we encounter every day. We adapt to this change, and above all, we grow because we grow with challenges. And I, as a teacher, have this perspective. I grow with challenges every day in one way or another. We face challenges at school, in the classroom, with our class coordinations, with our most problematic students. And so it is this attitude of resilience that we should adopt. I'm going to tell you a little story. This year, I was assigned a class coordination that was a bit complicated, which had previously belonged to a colleague as well. He was a history teacher last year. So I didn't know the class. I was told about some situations, some things were shared with me. Not very flattering things about the class. And so my attitude towards the kids at the beginning of the year was a bit tougher. I smiled very little. And today I have managed to establish a very close relationship with them, one of cordiality, interaction, and even complicity. That is my resilience. So I did not break. I tried to maintain my emotional balance to face all those demands from those young people, 11th graders, those young people who had a less positive experience last year, less pleasant. So we truly have to find the inner strength to pick ourselves back up, learn how to flexibly adapt to various challenging situations. And above all else, we must resolutely refuse to break at the very first sign of conflict and not allow ourselves to break at the first significant setback or obstacle that inevitably arises throughout our long professional lives. So, resilience, yes, this technique of not breaking, of facing challenges, of trying to go further is our responsibility, but it is also a collective responsibility. It is an opportunity for us to show ourselves, our colleagues, and our students that we move forward, that we are going to carefully consider and reflect upon the most effective and sustainable methods to improve our own well being and theirs. I have a detailed little illustration here. This was a collaborative exercise that we recently completed together during the training in Dublin. And here, if you carefully examine the details within this circular diagram, we found it essential to brainstorm and develop comprehensive and effective resilience strategies to face those unforeseen and challenging, less pleasant situations. And so, what was communicated to us during the training regarding the concept of resilience was exactly the core message we received: to remain incredibly strong, able to rebuild our emotional state and come out stronger from the different experiences we have at school, with students, with colleagues, with the educational community in general, and specifically with parents. It is important that we develop a healthy school culture to promote everyone's well being. Of course, this doesn't depend only on us. The promotion of this healthy school culture depends on everyone. But this attitude, which is a strength, this attitude of resilience, will certainly be a strategy. This not breaking, this facing challenges so we can keep moving forward, this taking care of ourselves. And a bit later, I will give you the image of the teacher as a gardener who takes care of their flowers, who waters them daily despite all the adverse weather conditions. The gardener is always there, always present. The teacher is a bit like a gardener. We have this ability to rebuild ourselves, to elevate our own status emotionally, to safeguard our personal well-being from possible social interactions that are less than positive for us, regardless of whether they ultimately benefit us or not. This capacity for resilience is this not breaking. There is a set of strengths that we have that we can hold on to as anchors: our creativity, our gratitude. We are persevering, we are good, we have a sense of humor, and we put this into practice in our classes. Many times we forget that we have these abilities, but we do. We constantly explore new pedagogical approaches, new strategies to help students catch up, to promote a healthier classroom environment. We are always open to different perspectives and new approaches to interaction. We acknowledge the positive moments of the day, the negative moments, but we recognize it was worth it, even though many times we come home quite disappointed and think, today was a hard day's work. Maybe today I wasn't able to convey what I wanted in the best way. Today I faced some problems with the students, but this introspection, this reasoning, this thought that we have at the end of the day ends up becoming gratitude. Because I am alive, because I have my job, because I have my students who, despite all the problems that may eventually exist, I have an emotional bond with them and they with me. So, this gratitude, recognizing to breathe, to reach the end of the day, to breathe, to recognize that we are not alone, is extremely important. Perseverance. We always keep our commitment, we put educational goals into practice. No matter how hard it is for us, I think that The teaching profession is perhaps one of the most resilient professions where the teacher most maintains their commitment. They work the hardest for their students and for the educational community. Even with a series of setbacks and obstacles, we try to find a way around them. We take a breath, adopt a new mindset, and continue on our path with great perseverance, with great resilience, because we do not break. Then, what I am now starting to do a little more, now putting into practice, is our sense of humor. We, we have to smile. We have to convey a sense of well being. And so that attitude I mentioned to you earlier that I had at the beginning of the year with that class, a more complicated class, a tougher attitude, gradually changed. And I started to smile and I started to turn what is difficult today into a tomorrow that is a little less burdensome. Of course, there are battles that are very hard to overcome. Many times we reach the end of the day saying, I can't do it, like I'm going to give up. No, the resilience and well-being of teachers is exactly that. It's not giving up. It's despite all the obstacles, despite all the setbacks, moving forward. This is perseverance, and it comes with the innate kindness of all teachers because we are good. Good in the sense of kindness, but also good in the professional sense. And we have a sense of humor. We have a sense of humor to help us decompress, a healthy humor as a tool, as a strategy for the progress of our students themselves, and even for our own mental health. When it comes to this complex process of emotional management and to this deliberate act of mentally and intentionally focusing our full attention on a particular action, this is what we are discussing. Technically speaking, it is formally called emotional management and the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a term that has been increasingly popular for many years, and there are many dedicated colleagues as well as experienced teachers who have undergone extensive training in this vital area of emotional management. That is not my case. I just have some knowledge about managing this strategy against stress, which is mindfulness, but I am not a specialist in this area. But anyway, I brought you this slide and I already talked to you about breathing, which was one of the things we practiced in that training. We breathe. Conscious breathing, taking pauses of XYZ amount of time to breathe. If you notice, many times we get annoyed with our students, and the tendency is to respond, to shout, to raise our voice. No, we take a deep breath. It's not always easy. I know it's not always easy. Many times things are much easier in theory than in practice. But if we breathe deeply, we reduce this physiological response, which is what we understand as stress, and slowly we begin to regain our mental clarity. Breathing is one of the most important techniques for emotional management, conflict resolution, and for seeing ourselves as teachers in our daily lives. This self-awareness, many self-reflection practices, what did I do? Is it right? Is it not? Are also ways for us to monitor our actions, our daily actions, in order to manage our emotions. Breathing is the key to recognizing this management of our daily emotions, which are many. Those pauses create. There is something very interesting that we talk about in the training, which was to promote a kind of creation of emotional offices where colleagues come together. They share stories, present these moments of briefness, of concentration, of disconnection, of releasing attention. Let me tell you a little story that we discussed there. One of my fellow teaching colleagues comes into the teacher's lounge, absolutely exhausted and drained, appearing to be completely and utterly, almost desperate and incredibly weary from the long day. And she said, today, before responding to any student, I took 3 breaths. And I thought, this is where change begins. This is where the students will see that I breathe first before acting. I close my eyes, I breathe, and they focus their attention on my attitude. And so this story is a simple one, but it shows us how we can recharge our minds, how we can face the daily challenges that are constant. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neuropsychiatrist. He developed many techniques in the field of neuropsychiatry, and he says something very simple, which I also found interesting. We can make some comments here. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response, even down to our breathing. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So notice conscious breathing, this awareness that we cannot just react with our emotions running high. These conscious pauses are, in fact, an inner growth and are what represent our cry for freedom, our ipiranga, our freedom, our liberty. So take a deep breath, my fellow colleagues. But this mindful breathing applies to any situation we face in our professional lives, to any situation in our lives. But breathing is very important. And I have learned this over time throughout my career, and above all this year, which was a very difficult year for me, especially professionally, because I lost my voice and had to develop breathing techniques, which I am trying to put into practice here in our conversation. So breathing, taking pauses, consciously analyzing our mind, that practice of mental analysis of our mindset is also a way for us to protect and take care of ourselves. Another strategy that we will look at next is the strategy of reframing. What is this reframing? As you can see there in the title, it's about transforming situations, perspectives. Reframing is the ability to reinterpret adverse situations, seeking in them lessons or opportunities for growth. It's not about denying the difficulty, but about broadening your perspective to include constructive possibilities. So reframing is not, look, I've tried everything and nothing works. No, we are going to transform those perspectives into, let's make a small change. That change in perspective often this fundamentally and significantly transforms a conflict or a specific and challenging dynamic in the classroom. I also have another brief yet highly illustrative narrative here, which is also crucially significant and relevant regarding this complex issue of changing perspectives. Okay. A teacher once came into the teacher's lounge and said to me, I don't know what's going on. I've tried everything. It's impossible. I can't establish a strong connection with these students. This happened just a few years ago. She was a teacher who taught at a school, a problematic one, in a TEP, so a territory of educational intervention. And she said, but I've already tried everything. I don't know why these students don't listen to me. What do they need in order to be heard? And it was at that moment that we started reflecting on this, and I brought up this question during the training. So let's change our perspective. Let's shift the focus of our attention. Try to understand what we can also learn from those students. Try to meet the students' focus of attention. Why is it that the way, for example, I am presenting certain content would interest them? They have other interests, they have other focuses of attention that are not related to the classroom. And so this reframing, this act of changing perspective, taking a perspective I had and turning it into one of new approaches that also meet the students' interests, can be a strategy to overcome our emotional fatigue, our exhaustion, and to reach the end of the day and feel grateful. So reframing this adoption of new dynamics, of new perspectives, is also a technique for emotional management, for managing conflicts. Notice here on the slide, you have some reframing strategies. What can I learn from this situation? Yes, which aspects may or may not be under my control? I will try to find some positive aspects within this big challenge. Looking for these positive aspects is in itself a way to minimize the challenge. Or will I adopt the perspective of a compassionate observer? It may not seem like it, But you can also be a compassionate observer in the sense of interpreting the students' attitudes, in the sense of interpreting the learners' reactions to understand why they react that way. Let us cultivate an attitude of optimism, confidence, and hope that we will overcome our conflicts and our challenges. And it is this attitude of reframing, changing the focus, changing the perspective that makes us more resilient. It's like this image here of a crystal, of a diamond that was rough and has been polished, and it became extremely beautiful, reflecting light. Reframing is this, it is this polishing, this change in the diamond's perspective. The rough diamond becomes a highly valued, extremely precious, and very durable jewel. As we continue to explore and implement these techniques, this method of consistently attempting to enhance our general well being, our daily professional and personal performance, but above all else, our fundamental emotional well being. There is a certain kind of scheme here that is widely used even in human resources management, in leadership, and which aims precisely to combat this emotional exhaustion, specifically in the field of education. This is active listening. Once, a visual arts teacher came up to me and said, "Sometimes I feel like the students look more at the board than at me, at the whiteboard." And I started to think about what I could do, that so called reframe, to change this situation. And I realized that when they looked at the whiteboard, it was a way for them to zone out because they weren't enjoying the class. They weren't connecting with what I was saying. So I started to realize that maybe I needed to change a little bit my focus, my attention towards the students. And I started to listen to them. I began to understand their needs, to try to grasp their interests without judging, but by listening to them. This active listening is also important to combat emotional exhaustion. Self compassion is not about feeling sorry for myself or for a colleague, but about offering help to myself or to a colleague. Because, in fact, many times I come home exhausted, tired, disappointed, but I won't give up. It's also important in the context of managing relationships at school, within the educational community. This mutual support that teachers usually provide is very important. Even in the teachers' lounge at the cafe, those healthy gatherings during those very short breaks, 10, 15 minutes at most, when we go for coffee and spend time together. Those minutes are precious for support, mutual support. I've often noticed, especially since I took this training, that in the cafe during the morning break, the longer 15-minute break, there's a healthy atmosphere. People take the opportunity to relax, share their experiences, and when they're feeling down, and I only have this experience when I'm feeling down myself, we get immediate help. This mutual support is very important for us to value ourselves and those around us. It's this kind of empathetic presence where we recognize the emotions, the emotional state of others, and we start to build bridges to broaden our understanding of others and to be able to help them. This is another technique. Empathy and compassion in relationships, especially in workplace relationships, is a technique for improving our well being. But there is one aspect that the trainer in the Netherlands pointed out to us. Remember, offering empathy does not mean absorbing other people's problems. Set healthy boundaries that allow you to care for others without becoming emotionally drained. Because our emotional exhaustion, if we fully take on someone else's problem, also ends up not promoting our own well being. We need to start looking and feeling with more awareness. We need to learn to take care of ourselves in order to care for others. That is the profound challenge of daily self care. Viewing self care not as a luxury, but as a non negotiable necessity. Self care is not selfishness, it is essential maintenance that allows us to care for others in a sustainable way. Building connections and creating restorative routines are fundamental pillars of our well being. Therefore, this is the foundation that allows us to keep living, working, and managing our conflicts with our students in a very healthy way. I don't know if you remember, but for a long time we used to constantly receive emails from the school over the weekend, and this would wear us out. I can't manage, but now that's not the case, if you notice, not anymore. Not anymore, because there was precisely this reflection by the administration to set healthy boundaries for our rest time. And so the trainer over in Dublin, Patrick, would tell us we have to turn off all notifications from Gmail, WhatsApp, the phone, whenever we're in a space meant for rest. And something extremely important, and I struggle with this a bit, is saying no assertively. We have to protect ourselves, our moments of leisure and rest. Don't bring school problems home. Don't spend the weekend thinking about work issues or conflicts or the tests you have to grade and end up neglecting your family. We pay a high price, we really do. So there are limits, healthy ones, and we need to have this need. We have to cultivate this need to take care of ourselves. It's not selfishness, it's truly a necessity to promote our own well being. And because if we are well, we can promote the well being of others.